And I'll be talking not that much about stable isotopes, but more over, let's say, a future concept in food analysis, a possible future concept of food analysis that you might have heard of. It's about foodomics. Is it the future of food analysis? Outline of my talk is about that. I'm going to introduce you to foodomics, if you don't know that yet. Then go a little bit more into detail about targeted and non-targeted metabolics, which is a part of the foodomics concept. And then I show you two examples that our group is working on, Alternaria mycotoxins and the folates that Michael already mentioned. And then I'll conclude with some perspective and shortcomings of the, let's say, the new concept of foodomics. So starting with some definition is about foodomics has been introduced by Alejandro Cifuentes in 2009, and he put up that definition that is it applies advanced omics technology for consumers' well-being, health, and knowledge, which is rather broad and vague definition. I would rather say, so from my point of view, it's the understanding and comprehensive understanding of food quality or food integrity, which is even more than food quality here. So a comprehensive understanding here, and that means the foodome, if you take the foodome, is the collection of all components that are present in food, the food sample. So it's still rather broad, and well, you need the several, let's say, concepts and platforms to assess the foodome as it is. Some of these platforms are not new, others are. So these platforms are, so for example, genomics, proteomics. Here are some of these platforms are highlighted here, which are currently already used in food analysis and also in the new foodomics concept here. And I would like to focus a little bit more on the metabolomics part, and there are the targeted and the non-targeted platforms for metabolomics here, where you often use LC-MS, MS, tandem MS, for example, for some marker compounds or contaminants, and the non-target metabolomics, which is used, for example, for food profiling and fingerprinting with high-resolution methods. Here, and I won't go into detail on isotopolomics or metalomics, which are also put under the umbrella of the foodomics concept. But two other definitions not to be mixed up here is the food profiling concept, which is, and food profiling and the food fingerprinting, which is rather different, because food profiling is the targeted quantification of compound classes and non-targeted detection of new compounds, which then will be identified. So it's profiling. It's not that, let's say, targeted and non-targeted, let's say, ways to quantify or identify single new compounds. Not to be mixed up with food fingerprinting, which you may know, it's a non-targeted analysis without any identification. So you measure just some, let's say, features in your spectrum or your chromatogram, but you don't have any idea about what it is. So you just compare it with reference compounds and so on, just to verify whether it belongs to a sample set or not. So I will just go more into detail in food profiling here. So starting from targeted to non-targeted metabolomics. So targeted metabolomics is what Michael already mentioned. I won't go too much into detail. The most targeted one, I would say, the metabolomics concept is stable isotope dilution assay, as you use stable isotopologues as quantitation standards. Internal standards for quantitation means it's the concept that you want to quantify an analyte and you use an isotopologue as internal standard, and then you differentiate between both by mass spectrometry, and then you can rather accurately quantify the analyte that is in the sample. So it's really targeted, as you use the targeted analytical standard for that. So you won't see anything else that you're not targeted on. Some examples here for the mycotoxins, the Alternaria toxins. Probably you're not that familiar to them. These kind of mycotoxins, these are rather emerging mycotoxins. They are coming from Alternaria fungi, and these are some black molds. So they cause harvest losses here in tomatoes, for example, or potatoes. And you may notice those on tomatoes, so black spots. And so this is very likely to be Alternaria there. And they cause losses here, and they produce mycotoxins. This is a set of mycotoxins that are known, that Alternaria fungi produce them. So here, different structure, for example, the benzopyrones, here alternariol and its methyl ether, the peroleoquinones, altotoxins, and some other structures. So these are known structures, and where there already exist some targeted methods to quantify them. For these targeted methods, we are using the labeled standards for that. So the problem mostly is how to get these standards, how to synthesize them. So you can either synthesize them chemically, we have done that for the folates, for example, or if that's too cumbersome here to synthesize them, so then let some microorganism do the job for you. That's what we did. And for the Alternaria toxins, though we let them buy Alternaria fungi. They produce for us the label standards after we fed them on glucose, on labeled glucose. So that was rather straightforward. Only problem is to purify the standards here from your culture medium. That means you need preparative HPLC, which could be tedious as well. Well, then we obtained those label standard. They are completely labeled with 13C and the perfect standards here for quantitation. One example, in wheat flour, here the altotoxins, for example. So this is the analyte, here unlabeled altotoxin present in the sample, and that's the standard that we added at the beginning of the analysis. So you perfect co-elution, and then you can calculate this one and the others as well when you added alternariol, for example, added as well to the sample, and you can quantify them. So that is really another completely targeted method. Okay. And then, so we could quantify lots of these toxins in diverse foods, where we had some interesting finding. I won't go too much into detail. For example, we found tannosonic acid in rather high amounts in millet samples, which was an issue for baby food in Germany some years ago. And for example, sorghum feed could be as well contaminated with rather high amounts of alternariol and methyl ether. And these two compounds, they are known to be genotoxic. So that could be an issue. There is no real risk assessment yet for these two toxins, and currently the European Union is working on that, and they are using those kind of targeted methods to assess the exposure of the population to them. Well, coming to non-target metabolomics, so that's total different picture, as you may see here. So that's on the high-resolution mass spectrum that you see lots, well, a myriad of compounds here, and that's the problem. Well, you can analyze, so you can detect them, but how to process the data? So that's the first point. Is those platforms, how to obtain these data and these many myriad of signals is so that is known for a long time as the FTI infrared spectrometry, and here is given the resolution. So if you want to detect all these many signals, you need resolution for them. And for metabolomics, you need high resolution or even ultra high resolution. So you need the respective platforms here for high resolution, and these are, I think, the most important ones for metabolomics. Time of flight mass spectrometry, Orbitrap mass spectrometry, or the Fourier transform, and cyclotron resonance spectrometry, which they confirm good resolution, high or ultra-high resolution, and even you can improve the resolution if you couple them with LC methods. And so then you can couple them with LC, UPLC, or even with GC, which improves the resolution then. So these are the platforms, the tools that you need for metabolomics then. Question is, what do you need for metabolomics? So what are the requirements on resolution, on separation is? So a general rule of thumb is, so what you need or what you want is, you want unequivocal elemental formula. So that's what you want to get from your data. So and for that you need resolution, and the general rule of thumb is that you need a resolution, a spectrometric resolution of about 100,000 or even more, than exceeding 100,000. So in this range you can get those unequivocal elemental formula for them. If that's below, so you won't get really an equivocal annotation of your signals. So to put these into this figures, the different platforms, the FT is here at a high resolution or ultra high resolution, so that fits here to the system. The Orbitrap and the TOFs are a little bit below here, this 100,000, but you can couple them with LC or HPLC or UPLC systems, so you get separation of your single compounds, isomers for example, that an FT cannot separate or cannot differentiate for that. So, and we are mainly working here on in the FT system, which looks like that. It's not a benchtop system, it's like sort of garage system, yeah. And we're not running that in our lab, so that's run at the Helmholtz Center, which is about 20 kilometers away from our lab, and that's run by Philipp Schmidt-Koplin, and he's affiliated to our chair, so we are applying the Foodomics platform, and we are measuring our samples there at the Helmholtz Center and comparing the results of our targeted method with the non-targeted method, that platform, and data from this FT system. It's a Fourier transform ion cyclotron resonance spectrometry, means ultra-high resolution, so the mass resolution can exceed those 1 billion, which to give you an impression, what that means is that you can differentiate two molecules by the difference of one electron mass. So that's the resolution that the system is possible to provide. And that means unequal elemental composition. So that is, and that's plus here, minus, so you can't couple it with chromatography, and no separation of isomers. So you can just determine the elemental formula of it, but you don't know anything about the structure. You just know the elemental composition of it. Some examples, Alternaria and the folates. So Alternaria microbolome, so that's what I already presented for with the targeted methods. We had some cultures here with Alternaria fungi, which gave a bunch of signals here at FT, so over 8,000 signals in one spectrum that you obtain. And if you zoom a little bit in, so if you zoom in this region, so you still have lots of signals here, and zooming further in within this bunch still, and so that can go on and so on until you get those 8,000 signals of single M over Z signals in one spectrum. Which means, how do you deal with the data? So that's the main problem. So about those 8,000 signals, what does that mean? Is that each signal is a single species? Not necessarily. So you have to filter that, and because you have, for example, you have natural isotopologues in the data set, and so you have to filter them out. So that means data management here. So this is done here at the Helmholtz Center by the so-called NetCult procedure. It means satellite filtering, which is a signal sort of noise in that, isotope filtering, and mass defect filtering. That means that cuts off some signals that are not possible because due to their mass defect. So we don't know where they come from, but they are theoretically not possible to be present. Yeah, so that we are filtering them out, and then the next step will be then we put all signals in a so-called mass difference network. This means we link also. The network means the nodes are the single metabolites, that means that are the single m over z values put in there, and then we connect or try to connect these single nodes by biochemical reactions. So for example, loss or addition of water. So every single node can be connected, or we try to connect every single node with other nodes to form that network that makes sense biochemically. Means that there is a connection via biochemical reaction. That means either that's a biochemical precursor, or it's a modification of one node, or there is any reaction link between those two nodes. Means that gives you a whole network here, and that confirms here as well your signals that they make sense. So that's not senseless what is in that all data set, so that makes sense because they are linked to each other by, let's say, reasonable reaction. The result was then, if you remember, about 8,000 signals, means as a result we can put 4,400 single, let's say, nodes in the network, so that makes sort of sense in that, which is about 55%, and that gives us unequivocal elemental formula. So that is even giving more meaning to this data set. And to give you an impression of these 4,000 signals, only 10% are present in databases. So these are only 10% unknown. Of that. So about the other 90% we know the elemental formula, but we have no idea how they may look like. So that's not unknown. Right. Accuracy by the difference network means give you an impression that about 75% of these formula annotation they lie within an accuracy range of 0.2 ppm mass accuracy, which is really different to, let's say, a TOF instrument, where you usually consider mass accuracy about 5 ppm or so, or if you go to 2 ppm. So here we take 75, so that's really accurate, the annotation of the elemental formula. Which means then information from the network is, for example, here some altotoxins is that gives you the information of the linkages between the single entities, say that way. So you find the biochemical precursors, links and modification, the possible links. So that's not a proof for them, so we can prove them that they are really interconnected, but that is the possibility that they are interconnected with each other. So, for example, so they differ by oxygen, for example, or that maybe a biochemical reaction, oxygenation or hydrogenation could be involved in it, or loss of water, for example, and so on. Well, that's about the mycotoxins. Another example is the folates that Michael already has been mentioning, and we as well working. So the problems in the folate is that we have lots of different vitamins. So what is currently known is about 50 different compounds in that, which gives us, that initiated our idea about using metabolomics as well in this field, because we want to measure them all within comprehensively in one sample set here. But the structure is it's very diverse, because we have here possible variation, for example, oxygenation or oxidation state here, linkages to C1 entities here, and here a number of glutamate moieties that are linked here to the whole structure, so about 50 different. And the problem of the folates are that they are only present in trace amounts. So that's a challenge even for targeted metabolomics, and we have been looking at, is that possible to measure them by non-targeted metabolomics? So this is the targeted assay, it's the stabilized doped dilution assay, where we add 13C label vitamins that are commercially available already. So that involves lots of sample preparation, for example deconjugation to split off the glutamate change, then anion exchange, solid phase extraction, and the tandem MS, which gives the known picture of the stable isotope dilution assay. So then we could quantify the folates in many different foods, and as well that's possible to use that assay as well in clinical application to, for example, to measure bioavailability of the folates from foods. Some results is about these are the folate contents that we measured here in different foods. And so you see that the range can be start with 14 in wheat, non-fortified wheat bread, which is rather low, and that could get up to, let's say, if you get up to strawberry. So that's the strawberry, rather high in folates. Tasty food, and here in the upper end is the durian, you probably know, which is even higher than that. And that means what would you need to cover your recommended daily intake is means that about here you would need here 2 kilograms of that non-fortified bread, which is not reasonable here to reach that. That's the Australian situation. So you in Australia, you're fortified with folic acid. That means you need only 180 grams of that bread to cover your daily intake. Comes to here down the line is from the durian you just need 90 grams. So which does not appear to be a lot, yeah, but probably you know. you know that one, and that brings me to a reference to Gary in the back, because he sent me, I think 1 week ago, he sent me an information about what the Thais did with durians is, yeah, and that is the durian, the king of fruits, yeah, that's most smelly, let's say most smelly fruit in the world, yeah, and the Thais, the Thailand space agencies, they sent baked durians into space. Yeah, they launched them into space, and then when they returned to Earth, the durians, that's what they are supposed to be. I haven't heard any information about that. That is for microgravity experience as a potential food for any astronauts that are probably want to feed on durian in outer space. Yeah, and I know Gary is a fan of durian, so he's quite interested in that. Well, just getting serious is well, what does the metabolomics of the folates? So that's a bunch of different vitamins which are interconnected here in, say, in the fruits. Example, and as well in our body, yeah, and so that was the idea here, to get the network which is already known. So this is the known network here of the folates, to get that complemented, let's say, with the metabolomic mass difference network. So that's the idea behind it. We are not that far yet, so I'll show you how far we are. Is then, if we look at spinach folates and apply the FTMS on it, so we as well can zoom in the mass spectrum. Here is what is needed for the FT is, so you need sample cleanup and sample preparation as well. So that's restriction of the method, because still the FT lacks the sensitivity that you just inject in the mass spec to get signals that won't work with folates, because they are only present in traces. So you have to do some sample preparation as well as some concentration on it, and then you see them here, and so that we could detect those signals of some single vitamins that we as well determined with the targeted isotope dilution assay. So that is good complementary to it. So this is the targeted method. So we got here the signals of the single vitamins. You see here, so these are the polyglutamates. You see them in the spinach, not only the, let's say, monoglutamates, which are already 5 or 6 or more of them, but as well the glutamate spectrum can be here from 2 glutamates to 6 glutamates in the 5-methyl form. So this is possible with already possible with the targeted method, and which is done by LC tandem MS, and that has still the superior sensitivity, which means that we need 10 times less of the sample amount that we need for the FT system. So this is the range, so limitation of this metabolic, let's say, approach. Coming to perspective and the shortcomings of this new concept, say that way. So the vision would be that now you will see an unprecedented number of detectable metabolite signals. So that is new. So now we see lots more of signals that we haven't seen before. Yeah, so you can form some relationship or identify between the different metabolites of them. But quantitation is a little bit of a problem, so a relative quantitation is possible, and not an absolute quantitation. So for the absolute quantitation is always relative, but accurate quantitation, you still need the targeted methods here. The shortcomings are so that you've seen the data management that requires analytical and bioinformatics skills, though. So you can't rely on the supplier of your instruments that they do the job. The software does the job for you. But I was rather surprised how low let's say the data management quality of the software is. So that has to be done by the researchers, by themselves, all this kind of filtering and so on. So that's not really implemented in the software. So that has been done by the researchers. So you need not only the analytical but also the bioinformatics skills for that. Then if you want to identify the structure of these signals, so that requires much more workload. So you just getting the elemental formula. If you want to know how the substance looks like, then you need other systems. That means fractionation, preparation, NMR, and so on. And the standardization of the procedure is still necessary. So each group has its own, or its own, let's say, protocol of that, and that's not yet standardized. So that needs some further work on that. And what you may have noticed is that what we see here is so from other metabolites, probably the targeted metabolomics is just probably the tip of the iceberg. If you look a little bit deeper with the non-targeted metabolomics, so that is about 2 to 10%, means the metabolites that we likely know how they look like. So about 10, in maximum 10%. Some 90% is the first, I would say the first dark matter is so that we cannot, well, probably cannot annotate or not assign to known structure is due to resolution, lack of resolution. So some instruments still lack the resolution, lack of identified compound that are not present in the database or database entries, and still the data handling is still the restriction to the method. And well, the second dark matter is here what we haven't detected yet. So that's really unknown what is still missing. So that is due to lack of sensitivity, so that we don't see the signals. For example, if you remember to the folates, if you look at any metabolomics data, in that non-targeted metabolomics data, you won't find any folates in it. And that's due to the lack of sensitivity of the method. Yeah. And folate is only one example. So there are a bunch of more bioactive compounds that you won't detect, and we haven't detected yet. So that means those non-detected bioactive, how would we find them? So that means we need some additional bioactivity testing and complement that with a metabolomics data here. Yeah, about standardization, one information that is just a project that is coming up in the European Union, just has been funded. Here is Metrofood, that we want to introduce the metrology and food analysis, which is a consortium of different researchers and institutes. We want to standardize food analysis, and that includes many different methods and metabolomics as well. So that is there some initiative to standardize that, which are necessary as well. Preparation of reference materials, just that you can compare the different labs with each other, the results and accuracy of their results. Well, probably that's the end of my talk. So I would like to acknowledge some of these people. So this is a picture of the Alps that we'd taken probably 3 weeks ago here. So it means in red the mycotoxin people, which is Marina, Stefan Asem, Frank Schmidt. Then the folate people is Lena, Nadine, Lisa Spiegel is here in the audience as well. And Phil Schmidt-Koplin is running the FT and doing the data management of that. And as well funding, so my stay here and Lisa's stay here is funded by Erasmus+. Yeah, I would like to acknowledge that as well. So that's probably the end of my talk. I thank you for your attention. I will be happy to take any questions.